Hello, and welcome to Sleep Stories World. I'd like to invite you to step into a world of relaxation and tranquility with this bedtime story, designed to help you unwind and de-stress. By engaging in this story, you can embark on a journey that nurtures and soothes your mind, promoting overall well-being through sound, restful sleep. Before we begin, let's prepare your space for rest. Ensure you're somewhere comfortably cool, dark, and quiet. If you need to adjust anything, your curtains, your temperature, your pillows, please do so now. When you're ready, lie down and let yourself settle into your bed. Feel the weight of your body being supported. You may want to cover yourself with a light blanket as your body relaxes. Now, gently close your eyes. There's nothing you need to see anymore tonight. Your only task now is to be here, allowing yourself to receive the gift of rest. Take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Breathe in deeply, feeling your chest expand. Breathe out, feeling your body sink deeper into your bed. In and out. With each breath, you're signaling to your body that it's safe to rest. Now, imagine being surrounded by a warm, vibrant light. This light is gentle and comforting, carrying with it a deep sense of peace and safety. As you breathe in, let this warm light fill your chest. As you breathe out, imagine it spreading gently through your upper body. Breathe in, and let the light expand through your shoulders, your arms, your back. Breathe out, and feel it filling your stomach, your neck, your head, every space within you glowing softly. If a thought comes by, acknowledge it like watching a leaf float by on a gentle stream, and then let it drift away. There will be time for those thoughts later. Now is for rest. On your next breath in, let the warm light travel downward. Feel it reach your hips, your thighs, your knees. Breathe out, and sense it flowing down to your ankles, to your toes. Every part of you now is surrounded by this gentle, warm glow. You are completely enveloped in comfort and peace. Focus on your breath and the warm light surrounding you. If your mind wanders, simply guide it back, gently, to your breath, to the light. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are exactly where you need to be. As we move into tonight's story, allow yourself to let go even more. Let the words wash over you like a gentle tide. You don't need to follow every detail. Simply receive the story as a gift, a soft companion as you journey toward sleep. And now, let us begin. While the world was still absorbing the tragedy of Scott's expedition and celebrating Amundsen's achievement, Ernest Shackleton was planning what would become perhaps the most remarkable survival story in the history of exploration. The South Pole had been reached, but Shackleton envisioned an even more ambitious goal: the first crossing of the Antarctic continent from sea to sea, a journey of approximately 1,800 miles through completely unexplored territory. Shackleton announced his ImperialTrans-Antarctic expedition in 1913, and despite the recent disasters in the Antarctic, he had no shortage of volunteers. The story goes that he placed an advertisement in London newspapers that read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success." While historians debate whether this exact wording was ever actually published, it captured the spirit of what Shackleton offered: honest acknowledgement of the risks alongside the promise of adventure and glory. Thousands applied. Shackleton selected 56 men for the expedition, which would be split into two parties. The main party, led by Shackleton himself, would sail on the Endurance to the Weddell seaside of Antarctica. Simultaneously, a support party on another ship, the Aurora, would establish supply depots from the Ross Sea side. Shackleton's group would cross the continent, finding these depots to sustain them on the second half of their journey. The Endurance was a specially built ship, constructed in Norway from wood and steel, designed to withstand ice pressure. She was 144 feet long and powered by both sail and a 350 horsepower coal-fired steam engine. Shackleton christened her with a name that reflected his own philosophy. Endurance was taken from his family motto, "By endurance we conquer." On August 8, 1914, the Endurance departed from Plymouth, England. Remarkably, this was just 4 days after Britain declared war on Germany. Beginning World War I, Shackleton offered to cancel the expedition and place his ship and men at the service of the war effort, but the British Admiralty sent him a one-word telegram in response: "Proceed." The government believed that maintaining British Antarctic exploration, even during wartime, was important for national morale and prestige. The Endurance sailed south, stopping at South Georgia Island, a remote, mountainous island in the South Atlantic, about 800 miles east of the tip of South America. It was the last outpost of civilization, home to several whaling stations where Norwegian whalers processed the enormous catches from the Southern Ocean. The whalers warned Shackleton that the ice conditions that year were unusually heavy, the worst they had seen in memory. Great masses of pack ice had drifted farther north than normal, creating a nearly impenetrable barrier. Shackleton considered the warnings but decided to proceed. On December 5, 1914, the Endurance left South Georgia and headed into the Weddell Sea. Within days, they encountered the pack ice, not the solid ice shelf they expected near the continent, but a vast, slowly moving field of ice floes, some as large as football fields, others the size of houses, all grinding against each other with tremendous force. For weeks, the Endurance navigated through leads, narrow channels of open water between the ice floes. Captain Frank Worsley, a brilliant navigator from New Zealand, guided the ship through this frozen maze, sometimes making good progress, other times trapped for days while waiting for the ice to open. The men could often see clear water just miles away, tantalizingly close but unreachable. On January 19, 1915, ironically, almost exactly 3 years after Scott had begun his fatal return from the pole, the ice closed in completely around the Endurance. The ship became frozen fast, locked in the pack ice approximately 80 miles from the Antarctic coast. Shackleton and his men waited, hoping that the ice would break up and release them. But as the days turned into weeks and then months, it became clear that the Endurance would remain trapped. The ship began to drift with the ice, moving slowly northward at the mercy of ocean currents and winds. They were aboard a vessel frozen into an ice floe, drifting across the Weddell Sea with no control over their direction or destination. The original mission, to cross Antarctica, was now impossible. Shackleton's goal shifted immediately and completely: get every man home alive. For 9 months, the Endurance drifted in the ice, moving over 1,000 miles in a gradual northward curve. The men established a routine: scientific observations, daily exercise, caring for the ship's 6 to 9 Canadian sledge dogs, and hunting seals and penguins for fresh meat. Shackleton maintained strict discipline and kept morale high through organized sports, music, and celebrations of holidays and birthdays. The ship became their world, a small island of warmth and civilization in an infinite expanse of ice. But the ice was not static. It was constantly moving, buckling, and fracturing under enormous pressure. Great ridges of ice called pressure ridges would suddenly thrust upward, ice blocks the size of houses piling on top of each other. The sounds were terrifying: deep groans and cracks like artillery fire as the ice shifted. The men knew that if the pressure increased enough, the Endurance could be crushed like matchwood. On October 24, 1915, the inevitable happened. The pressure became too great. The ice began to squeeze the Endurance, and the ship's wooden hull, despite being specially reinforced, started to buckle. The men could hear the timbers groaning and cracking. Water began to seep in through the straining seams. They worked the pumps desperately, but the ice continued to tighten its grip. Shackleton gave the order to abandon ship on October 27, 1915. The men salvaged what they could: lifeboats, food supplies, tents, sleeping bags, scientific instruments, and personal items. They also saved the ship's dog teams, leading them down onto the ice. They established ocean camp on a large, stable ice floe about a mile from the dying Endurance, and from there they watched as the ship they had lived on for over a year was slowly destroyed by the ice. The Endurance held on for 3 more weeks, her masts tilting at impossible angles, her deck breaking apart, her hull splintering. Finally, on November 21, 1915, she slipped beneath the ice and sank. The ship that had carried them to Antarctica was gone, and 28 men were alone on the ice, hundreds of miles from land, with 3 small lifeboats and limited supplies. Shackleton's leadership during this crisis was extraordinary. He immediately shifted everyone's focus from what they had lost to what they would do next. There would be no despair, no panic. They would march across the ice toward the nearest land, a feat that had never been attempted. They loaded the lifeboats onto sledges and began hauling them, along with essential supplies, across the fractured ice surface. The march was a nightmare. The ice was a chaos of pressure ridges, soft snow, and pools of meltwater. Hauling the heavy boats was exhausting work, and they made agonizingly slow progress, sometimes less than a mile per day. After a week of this brutal labor, Shackleton made a difficult decision. They couldn't continue this way. Instead, they would camp on a large, solid ice floe and drift with it, hoping it would carry them north toward the open ocean. They called this Patience Camp. For over 3 months, from December 1915 to April 1916, the men lived on the ice floe at Patience Camp, drifting slowly northward. They were now facing an Antarctic winter on the ice, with temperatures dropping and the days growing shorter. Food was rationed carefully. They hunted seals and penguins when possible, and Shackleton made the heartbreaking decision to shoot the dogs, as they could no longer feed them. The meat was used to supplement their own rations. As the ice floe drifted north into warmer waters, it began to break apart. On April 9, 1916, their floe split in half during the night, with a crack running directly through the camp. Men woke to find themselves on different pieces of ice, separated by dark water. They scrambled to reunite the party and realized they could wait no longer. It was time to take to the boats. On April 9, 1916, Shackleton gave the order to launch the 3 lifeboats, the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, and the Stancomb Wills. 28 men crowded into these small, open boats and rowed away from the disintegrating ice floe. They were heading for the nearest land, Elephant Island, a desolate, rocky outcrop about 60 miles to the north. It doesn't sound far, but they would be rowing and sailing through some of the most dangerous waters on Earth, the Scotia Sea, where massive swells, icebergs, and killer whales made every hour struggle for survival. The journey to Elephant Island took 7 days. The men rowed in shifts, constantly bailing water as waves crashed over the boats. They were soaked continuously, and the seawater froze on their clothing, creating shells of ice. At night, they couldn't stop, there was nowhere to land, so they tied the boats together and tried to rest while drifting. Some men developed severe frostbite. All were suffering from exposure and dehydration. Salt water had contaminated much of their drinking water, and they could only melt small amounts of ice to drink. On April 15, 1916, the 3 boats finally landed on Elephant Island. It was the first time in 497 days, over 16 months, that any of them had stood on solid land. Some men actually kissed the rocks. The island was barely more than a large rock in the ocean, with steep cliffs, glacier, and beaches of rough stone. It was completely uninhabited and far from any shipping routes. No one would find them here by chance. But it was land, and for the moment, that was enough. Shackleton knew that rescue from Elephant Island was impossible unless he went for help himself. The nearest human settlement was the whaling stations on South Georgia Island, over 800 miles away across the most treacherous ocean in the world. It was a journey that had never been attempted in a small boat, through seas where waves could reach heights of 60 feet and storms appeared with little warning. But Shackleton had no choice. He selected 5 men to accompany him: Frank Worsley, the brilliant navigator; Tom Crean, a veteran of both Scott's expeditions and enormously strong and reliable; Timothy McCarthy, an able seaman; John Vincent, a tough sailor; and Harry McNish, the carpenter who had reinforced the largest lifeboat, the James Caird, for the journey. The James Caird was just 22.5 feet long, about the size of a modern pickup truck. McNish built a makeshift deck over part of the open boat using canvas and wood salvaged from the other boats, providing some small shelter. They loaded her with supplies for about 4 weeks, though Worsley estimated the journey would take 2 weeks if conditions were favorable. On April 24, 1916, the James Caird was launched from Elephant Island. 22 men remained on the island under the command of Frank Wild, Shackleton's most trusted companion. Shackleton promised them he would return. As the small boat disappeared over the horizon, those left behind had no way to know if they would ever see civilization again. Rest now, and imagine that small boat, just 22 feet of wood and canvas, setting out across 800 miles of the stormiest ocean on Earth, carrying 6 men who had already survived more than most people could imagine, yet still finding the strength to continue.